are about to embark upon the seventh day of Passover. It's called Shvi Pesach, and it commemorates when the Jewish people crossed the sea. Now again, Passover holiday, we celebrated freedom. On a national scale, the Almighty brought the entire Jewish people out of Egypt. On an individual level, we all have our own personal Egypts, so to speak, things that we need to become free from. One person needs to become free from their arrogance. One person needs to become free from a particular desire. Another person needs to become free from the fact that they are depressed or bound by social pressure. When we talk about the seventh day of Passover, this is when we really break free. This is when the Jewish people crossed the sea. They turned back. They saw all the Egyptians drown. How do you get to that point? You know, it's so often a person goes through their seders and they say, oh, you know what, we talk about freedom, and then they kind of like eat matzah the rest of the week, and then their life is pretty much the same as it was before Passover. So here's the question. Are you happy with who you are? Is there something you want to change? If the answer is yes, then why not change it? You know, there is a pretty simple formula. First, you decide you need to change something. Then you decide to change the thing. Then you make a plan, and then you follow through. So what's the problem? Why aren't all of us transformed into different, better, happier, more productive human beings after Passover than we were prior to Passover? My Rabbi Wyne used to turn to us and say, listen, if God would help you change, could you change? We'd say, of course, if God would help us, of course we'd change. And then he'd say, do you think the Almighty wants you to stay mediocre, or do you think God wants you to change? So then we'd say, well, Rebbe, God willing, we'll change. And his response would be, God wills it, but do you will it? We know that only 1/5 of the Jewish people actually ended up leaving Egypt. Most of the Jews that were alive at that time, they stayed in Egypt and they died in the plague of darkness. And the reason why they stayed was because they didn't really want to be free. One element of freedom is you have to want to change. But in order to want to change, in a certain sense, you have to know that you can change. And a big part about Passover, the reason we talk all about the plagues and the splitting of the sea and all the miracles, is to realize that as long as we live in a state of, this is just the way my life is, then our perceptions dwarf us. And part of Passover is to become liberated for our self-dwarfing perceptions and recognize that we can become much bigger than we are right now. But on a deeper level, it's the understanding that we are bigger than we are right now. The way the Talmud puts it is in the following story. There was one time a princess. She kind of had a little bit of amnesia. She forgot exactly who she was. So she went out to the fields with the common folk, who was picking vegetables in the fields. When the king rode by in his chariot, he saw that his daughter was just behaving like a commoner. So he sent one of his servants to go and retrieve her and to bring her back onto the king's chariot. When her friends stopped and said, who are you? What happened to you? Why are you sitting there? You were just a commoner a few minutes ago, and now you're sitting next to the king? And the princess said, you're wondering what I'm doing here. I'm wondering what I'm doing here. And the point of the Medrash was that the Jewish people were working with bricks and mortar. They were slaves. For 86 years they were enslaved in Egypt under forced labor. They forgot who they were. So when it came time to be redeemed, and Moses says, let's go, most of the Jews simply couldn't say, it's time to go. Most of the Jews said, I don't know what I'm doing here. And they stayed in Egypt. But there were those select few that left Egypt. And we are all descendants of those people. The Kotzker Rebbe always asked, what is the greatest sin a person can commit? Forgetting who they are. On Passover, at the beginning, you said to yourself, I want to be free from certain things. I want to make some changes in your life. So now, make the changes. But we have a guidebook. Remember, the Jews did not leave Egypt to go into the wilderness. The Jews left Egypt in order to find themselves at the bottom of Mount Sinai and to collect 613 commandments. Those commandments define the Jew. They define our mission. So if you want to be free, the way to do it is go towards Torah. Make a commitment to be learning more Torah on a regular basis. find that next step for you in terms of your observance towards doing mitzvahs, doing what God wants you to do. Find the mitzvah you're not doing now, and if you need help to know what your next step is, I'm just an email away. We are people that are God's nation. We are to be a kingdom of priests, a holy nation, to be an example for humanity of what it means to live a great life. As we conclude Passover in the coming week, the Almighty should bless you to be the person you truly can be and really live like life is great. I'm Rabbi Wyne, the Young Israelite from Las Vegas.